amoeba, and there are some 4 successive photographs of this thing taken on infrared film immediately above my head, and then on the later exposures against the known background of the desert floor, a place to which you could return any time if you wished. So this one was taken in color by a deputy sheriff, Sheriff Stroke, near St. Cloud, Minnesota. There was a case involving President Carter's personal helicopter. A photograph was made by a civilian employee of the Defense Mapping Agency down there, and she was covering the president's departure. And there are perhaps 100 people watching the helicopter depart. And here is another one of a very similar type to the President Carter picture that was taken by Lee V. Ertley, a nationally known outdoor writer. This was taken in Utah. Again, the object was invisible when photographed. Here's one that was taken by me above the top of Mount Wilson in 1961. 4,000 feet in the air just shortly after dawn. The object is of the same general type as the 2 that we've just shot. Toronto in Vallejo, California, taking a number of photographs of these amoebic type space critters. Here is a photograph of the late George Van Tassel, very well known in UFO research. When this photograph was taken, was addressing a throng of some 2,000 people. The object above his head was not seen by anybody present. High-speed infrared film did make it apparent. These objects are appearing not only in Panama, but...
And I think they have amassed sufficient information to know of their existence. But, you see, they will not officially admit that they know of the existence of unidentified flying objects.
Dr. George King, president of the Aetherius Society, and international authority on UFO investigations. Trevor Constable jumps into the ongoing Governor Frank E. Strange's, director of the National Investigations Committee on Unidentified Flying Objects, takes a shot at government and its cover-up.
I would say in my 32 or 33 years of UFO...
By a Chinese soldier. An oil company employee was taking pictures from a drilling rig in Indonesia when he saw an object in the sky accelerating toward him. With one shot left, he took this photo just before it veered off. Photographic evidence of unidentified flying objects has come from all over the world. In June 1966, about 30 miles north of Albuquerque, New Mexico, this manned spacecraft was captured on film by leading UFO photographer Paul Villa. 3 years earlier, Villa shot this UFO as it passed over his head just above the trees, close enough for him to feel its heat. The saucer flipped on its edge, its lower half rotating. Then it traveled sideways while moving up and down. The ship hovered for some time. Mr. Villa estimated its size to be between 160 and 170 feet in diameter. This sighting covered a 5-minute time span. This photo was snapped near the Sandia Indian Pueblo. The angle at which the picture was taken gives the craft a cigar-shaped appearance, but in fact, it was disc-shaped. Robert Rinker, a field technician at the Chalk Mountain Laboratory in Colorado, unsuspectingly caught this UFO on film. He doesn't recall seeing it at the time the picture was taken, but did hear motor noises he attributed to a snowmobile. This impressive picture was taken by scientist Dr. Daniel W. Fry. This amoeba-type object is similar to those seen and photographed over Sydney, Australia. This was taken in the desert near Albuquerque, New Mexico on April 18th, 19... A New Jersey civil defense test attracted this UFO. George Adamski shot this near Mount Palomar Observatory in Southern California. This was taken by Dr. Daniel Fry in Riverside, California. This is one of the earliest known photographs of a UFO. It was discovered in old harbor records in Oslo, Norway, and is dated July 27th, 1907. Fatima, Portugal, 1917. 12,000 people saw this huge UFO, which was photographed by a local newsman. This photo has been published countless times. It was taken in Washington, D.C. on July 29, 1952, of a large cluster of UFOs surrounding the Capitol building dome. A Marine Corps pilot, while flying reconnaissance over Korea during the police action of the 50s, spotted this object, gave chase, and was able to get this aerial photo before the unknown darted out of sight. This was shot by an 11-year-old boy in Japan in 1976 and declared authentic by experts. The location was Tainter Lake near Colfax, Wisconsin, April 1978. A man and his girlfriend were enjoying their afternoon of fishing when the sighting occurred. He grabbed his Instamatic camera and shot these photographs during the 3 to 4 minute encounter. Mr. Joyce and his wife Norma, on an evening walk in Hot Springs, Arkansas, spotted this UFO. To explain this propulsion theory, noted scientist, educator, and UFO lecturer Dr. King is in closer agreement with Mr. Thomas.
We have the large mother craft. These can be tremendous size. They have a Earth or another planet. They're able to reverse the flow of gravity. This impression of the third satellite. On the top, there is a huge crystalline dome for collecting the sun's energies. At the bottom, there's a power matrix for transmitting the sun's energies after they have been conditioned by the enormous crystals within the craft. This next drawing gives you a rough idea of the position of the third satellite. You see the impression of the sun, the energies being collected by the dome at the top and transmitted to Earth through the power matrix at the bottom.
This alien was photographed in Milan, Italy, before the shouts of other witnesses frightened it away. These alien figures became visible only after the film was developed. Sir Cedric Allingham, former RAF pilot, photographed this giant alien in Scotland. In 1973, a family, while traveling near Mexico City, encountered this strange object. They fled the scene after getting these photos, which have been declared genuine by Robert Padilla, Special Service Director of Kodak, Mexico. Near Rio de Janeiro on October 8, 1977, Antonio La Rubia, a bus driver, walked to a large field near his home to wait for his ride to work. It was 2:15 in the morning, and the dim light made it difficult to identify the enormous leaden object blocking his path. Suddenly, an intense blue light illuminated the field, and 3 robot-like creatures appeared beside him. The next thing he was aware of was being inside a ship and being examined by the aliens, at which time he claimed they took a sample of his blood and made drawings with it on a TV-like screen. The next thing he knew, the spacecraft had disappeared and he was standing in front of the bus terminal where he worked. Persistent hounding by the press drove La Rubia into seclusion. In May of 1977, an Air Force officer and his son were driving in the country near Buenos Aires when the youngster spotted a huge capsule in the sky which ejected 3 luminous objects, then took off. Moments later, the 3 scouts disappeared in the same direction. A commercial pilot was returning to Rio de Janeiro from the international airport. About a mile from the field, he saw an object in the sky. These are photos taken of the Saturn-shaped object, which had been hovering between 2 airport runways. A young architect in Maldonado, Uruguay, was driving home when bright light flashed in the sky and he saw this silvery object. Fortunately for his reputation in the community, a lady in a nearby farmhouse verified the sighting. Others relate their experiences with alien beings. Robert Short.
That I've since found out comes from the planet we call Saturn in our solar system. It was, to me at the time, a very frightening experience. The being said to me, "We have come down to make an adjustment in the power of our craft. We will see you at a future time."
Mr. Robert Schofler.
I found myself going to Orcas Island in Washington, Key West in Florida, Palenque and Chichen Itza on the Yucatan, Teotihuacan at Mexico City. And each of these places, I met beings. They would come up to me and know who I was, not by name, but why I was there, and they had similar purposes.
Doctors King and Stranges disagree.
Someone said if these are intelligent beings from outer space, they couldn't be too intelligent if they're visiting the planet Earth. But on the other hand, I believe that we have been a source of, shall we say...
Mr. Thomas Miller.
They will be landing very soon as the Earthman receives the Space Brothers in an open and receptive way where they would lay down their hatreds. Because the Space Brothers bring a whole new way of life which will restructure society as a whole. We will start to tear down the various prejudices which we have had against life on other planets and life in other worlds.
Chan Thomas discusses solar energy things of UFOs. Second, determine if UFOs pose any threat to the security of the United States. Third, determine if UFOs could contribute any advanced technical or scientific knowledge. Blue Book officers were stationed at every Air Force base in the nation. The project produced what the Air Force considered a satisfactory explanation for most of the nearly 13,000 sightings reported through 1969. Of the unexplained UFO incidents, the official statement is, the description of the object or its motion cannot be correlated with any known object or phenomenon. On the basis of Blue Book reports, the Air Force drew the following conclusions. First, no UFO has ever given any indication of threat to the national security. Second, there is no evidence that UFOs represent technology beyond present-day scientific knowledge. Third, there is no evidence that any UFOs are extraterrestrial vehicles. Many skeptics charged that the Air Force was not telling all that it knew, and the transfer of the responsibility of UFO research from the Air Force to the University of Colorado in 1969 did little to end the suspicions and outright accusations of the solar eclipse of the 20th century. Dr. Halldór Halsson, a local dentist, took several photos from his vantage point on the beach in Iceland. He did not know until his film was processed that he had photographed this UFO. A few miles down the beach, Mr. K.G. Jensen of Germany was there to record the historic eclipse. Jensen did, however, notice the UFO and deliberately photographed it. Several other people reported seeing the UFO that day. This was taken in Lublin, Poland, August 30th, 1977, by a photographer who still lives behind the Iron Curtain and asked to remain anonymous. Patricia Monin tells her story.
It was January 1977. As we came to the station where my father is a customs officer, when we came upon this thing which sat motionless in the sky.
Professor A.Y. Bonillo took this on
Of interplanetary spaceflight or flight. A complete biological thing was the use of infrared film that is sensitive to heat as well as to light. And this simple substance, which has been in existence for, at least 75 years, it's the principles of sensitizing film. The critters, as I call them, the living organisms of whatever kind in the atmosphere that are unseen. And they are self-contained mind-body units just like we are. A human being, when all's said and done, is an integrated mind-body unit. And these organisms are of the same order as that, although much lower on the evolutionary scale than we are. On the other side, you have what are obviously manned constructs. They are devices of some type that are propelled by manipulations of energy that we do not yet technically understand, and to which we are just beginning to gain fringe access. But the two aspects of UFOs, the critters on the one hand and the craft on the other, each of which have to be given equal value in an objective investigation, these two things are mutually confused because the energy form involved is the same. The energy that propels the critters is used technically by the ships. That's the way I conceive of it.
By the inventor of the machine. The PSE told that Travis Walton was telling the truth about a real occurrence to the best of his ability.
In the most unusual encounter ever reported, an Italian security guard was abducted for an incredible fourth time. Fortunato Zanfretta of Genoa, Italy, has been hypnotized, given truth serum, and subjected to intensive questions. But his story is unshakable. Zanfretta's first two abductions, both in December of 1978, were followed by another in July of 1979. Then on December 2nd, 1979, a year after the first abduction, he was kidnapped again. After the last occurrence, eyewitnesses reported seeing the alien spaceship take off only a short distance from where Zanfretta was found. Jim Lorenzen tells of the Walton investigation. To those who have had these experiences, they are very real. One such person is retired Air Force Colonel James McNamara, former press advisor and public information officer to General Van Fleet with the 8th Army in Korea. He is presently involved with city government in Los Angeles, California.
Mysterious material, if you will, which I like to call angel's hair because it resembled the angel's hair which we decorate our Christmas tree.
Mr. Michael Barton, California author and lecturer, does not doubt his experiences. The people who were with him at the time of the sightings believe it. Colonel McNamara concludes. Alan Michaels makes a startling claim.
There are some 2 million other planets living on Earth today.
Ruth Norman, known as Space Ruthie, while preparing for the arrival of more extraterrestrials, speaks from her California base.
Greetings, Earth people. I am your Space Fleet Coordinator for long now on your Earth planet.
Not all sightings can be dismissed as unreliable. An object standing still in the sky over England was photographed by an airline pilot taking home movies while on holiday. It hovered for quite a long time, and he knew it was definitely not an airplane. He continued filming it as it streaked across the sky, leaving a visible trail. This film was turned over to the British military intelligence for examination. After extensive investigations, they were unable to identify the streaking object, and they classified it a UFO. This rotating craft was hovering over the trees in Merlin, Oregon, when photographed on 16mm motion picture film by Dr. Daniel W. Fry. The same rotating ship was also photographed 700 miles away in Joshua Tree, California. Val Johnson saw a bright light in the sky. He recalls only the sound of shattering glass. Then, he was 854 feet from where he started. The engine was dead, the clock and his watch were stopped, and his face and eyes were